Hello, I'd like to welcome you to today's presentation hosted by the Arkansas Small Business and Technology Development Center here at the University of Arkansas. Wherever you are with your small business, we're here to help you. Today's presentation is featuring Melissa Forziat, who has worked with us off and on for a long time and always shares really great information that can help you with your marketing of your small business, or if you're just starting out, really gets you a good step forward and understanding what you need to do. Today's presentation is create a profitable marketing strategy. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Melissa and get started.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Julie. And I'm just going to take a moment to put my slide deck up here. So we are almost all set to go and get the chat. Okay, so hello, everybody. Thank you again so much for joining. It's really nice to see a group of this size for this presentation. I think this is the most important marketing topic. So it's really rewarding to me to see so many of you on for this session. For those who haven't seen me speak before, my name is Melissa Forziat. I originally started out in my career doing major international sport events. I worked things like Olympic Winter Games and Rugby World Cup and with the US Olympic Committee. So I started with these huge brands that were operating at a very large scale. And then about 10 years ago, I started my own business, which is a micro business, like I'm sure many of you have as well. So what I realized in that process was that I needed to figure out how to take all those great principles of marketing that I learned at that big scale, but make them work for a business that had the resources that you or I might have, which is nowhere near the resources of an Olympic Games. So a conversation like this is especially important to me because it's about maximizing your resources. It's about how do you get the most out of every single relationship that you build for your business, and create kind of a deep long-term game with them where you're just getting everything you can out of the resources and time that you're spending doing your marketing. And with that efficiency, we're able to grow our businesses. And I've found that efficiency is really the name of the game for small businesses, like most of us probably have. We don't have a lot of resources to throw around. So this is going to be about respecting what you've got and stretching it as much as you can. So first of all, a huge thank you to the ASB TDC for putting this together, to Julie and Mary Beth and everybody who's been working on this. For many of you, this is, the culmination of quite a few different presentations in this series. If this is the first one that you've done with me, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. And a few quick housekeeping items just to get us going here, make sure we understand how this will work. So even though everybody is on mute today, I do encourage you to minimize the distractions on your end. This material can feel complicated, can feel like a game of 3D chess if you haven't seen material like this before. So it's really best if you're sitting through it and thinking about your business at the same time and kind of working through the questions at the same time. So if you've got the ringer on your phone, if you've got a messaging device on in the background, this is a good time to shut that down. Now, there's a lot going on in this slide deck. Some of these slides are meant to be sort of resources for later or exercises for later. So you will have access to the full slide deck. And I'll put it once again, but there's a link in the chat here that gives you access to a landing page on my site that has all of the resources from this presentation, except for the recording, which Julie is gathering on her end. So you'll be between all of these different resources, you will be able to go back later and watch this presentation back or work through some of the ideas in more depth. So for now, as you're listening to this presentation, just really sit with it. Know that you'll be able to access the material again later as you need to. And in terms of questions. First of all, there may be some times that I pose questions to you. And when that happens, I encourage you to respond in the chat. So this is a great time to make sure you know where the chat is. So go ahead, look for the chat, make sure yours is set to everyone, and let us know who you are. I've introduced myself, so this is a good time for you to let us know what your business is. And that'll be helpful to me as well, as I get a sense of what types of examples here might be most relevant to those of you who are listening. So feel free to let us know what your business is and maybe where you're located. And that'll be a good chance for us to check that out. And if you have questions, I'm going to encourage you to save those questions for the end, because this material really builds as we go. It starts off a bit more theoretical, a little bit more abstract, and then we're going to get more and more specific as we go through. So you may find that there are questions that you have in the beginning that I'll have answered by the end. But if I haven't, that's a great time for you to ask them. So we'll make sure we carve out some time at the end for all of your questions, and maybe even some questions specific to your business so that we can think through even more examples. So it's great to see some people starting to introduce themselves in the chat, and hopefully you'll all be able to take a look at who else is there in case there's any potential for partnership as well. So let's set the stage on what we have coming up here. What are we trying to accomplish when we talk about how to create a profitable marketing strategy? The reason I love this material is that it's so rarely done. When you look at marketing workshops that are offered by different institutions, it tends to be about how can I get new leads? How can I, get shiny new objects? How can I use all those new fancy platforms and tools? Those tend to be the types of material that is offered, but we very rarely talk about how do I stay in front of the people who have already heard about me. And that's the sweet spot. We really want to be able to have continued contact with people who have heard from us for the first time, because as people build stronger relationships, we're more likely to buy something from you. So just continuing to have conversations about how to reach brand new people every time doesn't help us progress in that way in those relationships. And that's why this material is entirely focused on that. We're really going to look at the life cycle of those leads that you're building and asking ourselves, how are you going to stay in front of them until they become your customers or your clients or whatever it is you're trying to get them to become. So that's the objective that we'll have today. To me, this is the most important material you can have for your business, because this is where the profit comes in, and this is where the efficiency in your resources comes in. So if this is new material for you, if this is something that's a new concept for you to think about, it may take a little bit of sort of sitting with it for that to work out for you and for that to feel comfortable for you. If this is something that maybe you've been in business for a while and you have already started to think this way, I'm hoping that going through some of these examples will give you some specific ideas on how to up your game. We can always improve the way we're continuing to stay in contact with people and, some of the ways that we're maximizing those relationships. So that's what we'll be looking to do today. And just to make sure we're all in the right place, because this is an 1.5 hour presentation, it's a little longer than some of our other ones. So I want to make sure everybody is in the right place. This material is for you. First of all, if you want to convert more of your leads into actual clients or collaborators or customers, maybe you're in the situation where you're reaching a lot of people, but they're not necessarily taking your calls to action or taking the next step. We're going to be looking at how you can start going a little bit further with each of them today. Also, this material is for you if maybe you want to make more money from the clients you already have. If you feel like there's more repeat clientele work that you can be doing. On the other hand, if you don't feel like that's a situation that applies for your business, maybe what you're looking for is more word of mouth from the people who are currently hiring you or working with you. And so that's another thing that we can be looking at here. There's really always some sort of advantage to staying in touch with people, especially those who are already the closest to your business. So those are a few different things that we will be looking to do today in this material. And here's how we'll go about this. Now, I did mention that we're going to start a bit more theoretical, a bit more abstract. I think of this presentation like sort of peeling back the layers of an onion. We're going to get more and more specific, more and more detailed as we go along. So we're going to start just by generally talking about the value of staying in touch, and then going a little bit more specific and strategizing how to stay connected. And then we're going to really start getting into examples and talking about how your strategy works and some tips for creating your own marketing funnel. And that marketing funnel is really the format that we'll be working with to talk about marketing strategy. And then we'll circle back and talk about once more why this is worthwhile to do, some of the benefits of actually going through exercises like this for your business. All right, that's enough setup. So if you feel like you're in the right place, welcome. Let's talk about how to create a profitable marketing strategy. All right, first things first. Value of staying in touch. You know, before we can even talk about how to do this, we have to know why we're doing it to begin with. Why is it useful for you to be sitting here listening to this today? Why is it useful for you to do these exercises later? Well, I want to start by taking your temperature. So go ahead and respond to the chat if you're here with me live. How often would you say you've reached out to your audience this year so far? I know that is a very broad question to ask, and it's broad on purpose. So let me know what comes to your mind when I say that. If you could think, you know, we're in July now. If you can think about January through July, and you can think about your audience or audiences for your business, about how often would you say you've been reaching out to them? And the first answer that we're getting in here so far, I'm going to be saying weekly, but feel free if you're here live with me to jump into the chat and let me know. If you're not on with me live, think about this, pause the presentation for a moment and just think about it. Randall's saying monthly social media posts on Instagram and Facebook. Tackmanite is, maybe monthly, maybe less. Ashley is saying reached out at least once or twice a month. Okay, we're getting a bit of a range. It does look like people have some level of consistency here, though. So Carl is saying recently began daily. Brennan, Nicole, let's see, every other day or so. Social media pages weekly in my private Facebook group. Okay, so we're getting some different responses here, but it looks like we're getting everything from weekly to monthly. Some people are being specific about where they're reaching out. And what I think will be really interesting for you is that no matter how much you think it is that you're reaching out to people, what we're going to look at today is also the different channels that we're using and the different segments of our audience. So you may find that what felt like an answer that really is, specific to you, you may find later that it was only specific in one area. So this is something that I want everybody to investigate as we go. But I do love that so far, every single person who's responding does have a level of consistency in their outreach. And if you're somebody I'm also curious, as we get started here, I know you're answering one question, but I'm also going to pose a second question just so I have this in my head. If anybody here is pre-launch, they haven't actually started in their business yet, let me know. Because if we do have anybody in that situation, this is a great time for you to be listening to this material. But it may be a little bit more of a 3D chess game for you because you have a lot of things to consider. So I just want to be aware of how many people are in that situation. We do have at least a couple people who are there. So stick with me, Katie and Kaya. It's great that you're here. For some of the other people who are already in their businesses and operating, it may be a little easier for them to conceptualize some of these things, but we'll get there. Okay, I promise. So yeah, we have at least a few people. So this is a great way to just get us started and see what our starting point is, what's taking the temperature of this group. We're doing pretty well about doing outreach in general. So let's just try to make it more and more specific as we go. When it comes to selling, there is a key rule that I want you to remember. And this is a general sales principle called the rule of 7. So the rule of 7 states that it takes at least 7 touches to, you could say it's to convert a lead into a sale. You could say to warm leads enough. It's basically to build enough trust with your leads that when you start putting a call to action in front of them, they would actually take it. Now, the reason that I specify that this is a general sales principle is that number 7, there are companies out there that use their analytics to get much more specific about this. They might say, okay, based on our research, based on our data that we've collected, if we do 10 touches and then send somebody from the sales team in, that's the sweet spot. There also may be different channels that you're communicating in that may dictate a different number. So for example, if I reached out to you 10 times by social media, it might not be as strong a touch as if I had, 1 hour-long presentation with you. So, you really need to kind of look at the different channels and break it down there, because you may find that some touch points are stronger and more meaningful to your audience and to the relationships you're building there than others are. So that rule of 7, as much as it's a general sales principle, let's make it even more general and say you're probably going to need to reach people a lot more than once. And depending on what your business is, you may need to account for reaching them a lot of times. And depending on where you sit with it, you're going to need to figure out how to do that in your business in a way that's something you can maintain, something that you can sustain in the long term. It's important that we think about these things in advance so that we're actually setting ourselves up for success in our business and not for burnout. So a couple other ways that I want you to think about why this is important. If you lost touch with somebody, it can be awfully awkward to know how to reach out to them again. I mean, think about it. Have you ever had somebody on your to-do list? Oh, I need to reach out to this person today, but you're not totally sure what to say to them. So you're sitting there thinking about it. Maybe you're feeling a little anxious about it. Oh, what do I say to this person? I'm not really sure how to start the conversation. Is it going to be weird? And maybe you hold off and you say, okay, you know what? I'll reach out tomorrow. And then tomorrow that person's on your to-do list and you're thinking, I do need to reach out to them, but, I still don't know what to say. And it's a whole day after it was yesterday, and I'll reach out to them tomorrow. And sometimes these people get pushed and pushed and pushed until they just sort of fall off of your to-do list altogether. And that's a really unfortunate thing, because that was a contact that you had a relationship with at one point, and now you can really track as it starts to grow cold, which it ends up feeling like, a waste of your resources, a waste of your time, a waste of that relationship. There was potential, and maybe now it just feels like it's in this land of awkwardness. So, we've all had that happen. And the question is, can we have that happen less? Can you build a system around your marketing that allows for this to happen less and less frequently? Because the more you're staying in touch with people, the more growth your business can have. So, let's look at it from that standpoint as well. Again, we're in that abstract phase of why we're thinking about marketing funnels and marketing strategy. Well, your business is going to grow by planting seeds and nurturing leads, but it's not going to grow by wasting opportunities. Those people that you met a year ago, how many of them are you still in touch with now? How can we get it so that you're in touch with more and more of those people year on year? I also want you to think about this. This is just another way to visualize why this is important. Think back to the start of the pandemic. Not that I'm trying to bring any of you back to a hard place, but think about that time initially, that first, let's say, month, when so many businesses were starting to communicate with their lists. So I want you to think about how you reacted to messages from companies in your inbox during that time. I will tell you how I was reacting. I don't know if this is how all of you felt, but I was hearing from a lot of different companies, and it fell into a few different categories. One was a category of businesses that I actually had no idea who they were, how they got my name or email, and that I was ever on their list. And they were reaching out to me and telling me, this is how our protocol is changing. This is what we're doing. And I didn't really care because I didn't know who they were. I was more suspicious of how I got on their list to begin with. And in some cases, that was my opportunity to unsubscribe from a list that I didn't know I was on. Now, there was a second category of businesses that I do remember how I got on their list, but it's been a minute. It's been a really long time since I've heard from them or even thought about them. And they wanted to tell me their new protocols and what they were doing around the pandemic as well. And maybe I had an interest to find out more. Maybe I didn't. But then there was this third category of the businesses that actually had a strong relationship with me, the companies that I was frequenting, the businesses that really meant a lot to me, or the ones that had just been staying in touch with me all along, that had built a relationship with me. And I did want to know that they were okay. And I did want to know what they were doing differently. And I did want to know if their protocol or their pickup locations or whatever, I wanted to know what was going to happen with them. And so the businesses that I was most likely to open these emails were the ones that had been in frequent touch with me all along. And this can be counterintuitive to how a lot of us think as marketers for our businesses, because so many people that I work with say, yeah, but I don't want to be overbearing. I don't want to reach out too much. But when you think about it, like think about your closest friends, your closest relatives, these are the people that you speak to the most, and you're also the most likely to pick up the phone the next time they call. You're most likely to make time for them if they shoot you an email and say they want to catch up. They are in most touch with you, and you're happy to carve out the most time for them in a lot of cases. So it ends up having the reverse of what we think is going to happen, or it's actually not the case that if you talk with somebody less, they want to make more room for you. We do need to keep those relationships growing in some way in order for people to want to hear from us and to really care about what we're saying with them. So this is just something to think about. And I really wanted to approach this from a few different angles to show why it's so valid that you stay connected. But now let's say you're in agreement with me. Great, Melissa, I understand. I want to stay in touch with people, but how do I do it? Now we have to start looking at that next level of it, of thinking still broadly, but thinking more about the how that we're going to get this done. So let me pose a question back to you. I've been talking a little while here. So for those of you who are on with me live, I would love to know, especially because so many of you are doing relatively frequent outreach on at least one channel. Do you actually have a plan mapped out for how to stay in touch with the different segments of your audience? There might be people, for example, who are not following you on social media. Do you have a way to stay in touch with them? Have you done any amount of mapping this out, or are you just sort of in a habit of doing certain things for your marketing in general? So I'm curious to know from those of you who are here, especially because so many of you are staying in some amount of touch with your audiences, how much of it is mapped out? How much have you thought about the different groups that you're trying to reach? And for those of you who specified a channel, how much have you thought about the people who you can't reach through that channel? So this is a good opportunity just to take your temperature as a group on, how much of a map have you ever done, if you actually have something like this, or if it's in your head. I'd love to get some thoughts on that. For those of you who are pre-launch, this is your chance to start building that map. I assume that you don't already have something and you're not currently activating a plan, maybe, but this is a good time to start thinking about what is the plan that you want to put in place. Takmanai is saying, no, you've just been posting and sharing, but doesn't actually have a plan written. Ashley's saying, no, I usually try to post baked goods in posts. So you have a rough idea of the type of content that you want to do, but not necessarily like a calendar or a map of it or a schedule. Okay. So far, the first couple people, they're doing consistent outreach, but not necessarily planned. Okay. Emily is saying no plan here either. It is interesting to see this, that so many of us, now the answers are flooding in. So many of us seem to be doing something that we don't necessarily have like a lot of guidelines. Brennan is saying I have a calendar that reminds me on certain days to write a blog post, send an email, or post into a private group, create a new freebie. I love it. Be interesting to see if you end up with any new ideas coming out of today. It looks like you're covering a lot of different types of ground. Katie's saying I have a CRM and I'm working on creating a marketing plan with multiple in-person, print, and social posts. I like that you have all of those different elements that you're looking to cover, because that's how I look at marketing as well, online and offline. Randall's saying we use social images for clients. Let's see, I plan to just try for at least 6 posts a month. So, you have a plan specific to social media. And I would be curious, Randall, and this is true of anybody who's specified a particular channel in the very first question that I asked. What happens if people aren't following you on that one channel or in that one place or in that one networking group? What are your ways of staying in touch with them outside of that? So that'll be something that's useful to think about as well. All right, well, so we're getting a pretty good sense of, there is a bit of a range of people who are listening in here and what your experiences are. So what I love about this is we're going to keep getting more and more specific as we go through. For some of you, the early stuff is going to be really relevant right now, but for those of you who have more of a plan in place, stay tuned towards the end of this as we keep going. Okay, so all of this is to say, let me get back into some content here. The better you plan, the better your plan actually is, the better your follow-up is likely to be. And as a result, the better your sales revenue and or your referrals are probably going to be as well. Good marketing doesn't happen by accident. And the more you're executing a bigger picture, the more likely you are actually capitalizing on opportunities that are in front of you to mention things, to build a stronger relationship. So this is something that hopefully everybody will find at least one way to improve what they're currently doing by the end of this session. And that may look a little different for everybody who's listening in, because I can see that you're all so different in how you're operating the marketing for your businesses right now. Now, as we talk about how we get this done, there is a specific framework that I want to start talking you through, but let me clarify on some terminology that I'm going to use, because this is a little different than how some other marketers might use them. So when I say marketing funnel, which is the framework that I'll be talking about today, I may use that interchangeably with terms like sales funnel and pipeline. And not all marketers are going to do that, but here's some logic of why I'm going to do that. When I think about micro businesses, a lot of times the marketing people equal the sales people. You might be all of it for your business. So when you're thinking about marketing, I would prefer that you think about it from the perspective of the consumer who is experiencing your marketing, who is experiencing your sales. You might have, what you're doing might be labeled differently if you had a larger team with, you've got marketing people and sales people, and there has to be some sort of a handover for the leads. But for a lot of us who are in micro businesses, we're all of it. We have to do all of these things. And so what I want you to be able to think about is how to create a seamless process for your client on the receiving end of this. We're wearing all of the hats in a lot of these cases, so we want to think about it from the client's perspective to make sure they feel like they've been really nurtured in the process. For some people, when they talk about sales funnels, they're talking about specific, technology-based, maybe like landing pages on websites that have squeeze pages, and they're trying to get people into a flow for a specific product, and they're going to send reminder emails until somebody buys this specific thing. I'm looking at this in a much broader way. I want to think about all the things that you're doing for marketing online and offline across all of your different products or services, across all of your different audiences, and ask you the question, what are you doing to reach out to those people? How can we make it more efficient? And how can we make it more repeated for them? Which may sound like opposites, but you will find ways to make efficiencies while getting in front of them more consistently if you really look for them. So those are some things that I just wanted to set up as we get going here. And this idea of a marketing funnel it's going to be a visual structure that we're creating for your business to help you organize and maximize both your customer service and your sales. Again, we're thinking about this from this standpoint of the client experience. How are they hearing from you? What are they hearing from you? And how can you keep that seamless and keep them moving forward through your pipeline? So that has a lot to do with your customer service, and the result of it may likely be more sales or more referrals from them, depending on what you're looking for. Now, another way to look at the idea of a marketing funnel is that what we want to create is these pathways that you're going to guide your leads through so that they can become your best customers or clients, whatever it is is the best version of that relationship for you in terms of a label or a term. That's what we're looking to create, the strongest possible relationship. Let's talk about the reverse. What does it feel like when you don't have one? So I'm just going to give you a quick insight into my own business. Before I actually had any sort of a marketing funnel structure, before I had worked out the plan for how I was going to approach this, I sat down one day. What you're looking at here is a picture of me, a wonderful picture at jury duty. This is from many years ago while I was living in Seattle. And it just so happens that a friend of mine got called to jury duty for the same 2-day period that I did. So we were sitting next to each other in this room with hundreds of people, and we were just waiting to get called in and see if we were going to be assigned to a case. And at the end of 2 days, he shared this picture with me because he thought it was screamingly funny that I was the only person in the room who hadn't gotten up out of that chair for 2 business days. I probably went to the bathroom, but I ate my lunch in my chair. I just spent 2 days sitting in this posture, tapping away at my laptop. And so I looked at this photo and I thought, what was I doing all that time? What was I really doing for my business, and was it moving me forward? So I sat down and thought about, what are the things that I do working on my business, not just serving clients. And in fact, what am I doing for marketing? I was doing all kinds of content creation. There was a lot of stuff on my to-do list every day. So I sat down and I wrote what I was doing for marketing for my business, just big picture. And what you are looking at behind that, we're looking at 5.5 pages of kind of nonsense. This is not a really useful way to look at a marketing strategy. And as I started to put all this down, it became overwhelming to me because I thought, well, it looks like I'm doing a lot, but which of the things that I'm doing are actually moving my business forward? Which of these things are busy work? Which of these things have been profitable for me? What's a good use of my time? What's not? I couldn't answer those questions looking at this. So I knew that something needed to change about how I was conceptualizing what I was doing. And I started to work through what a funnel would look like. Now, what I'm going to show you on the next page is not meant to be legible. We're going to work through examples that you can read later. I just want you to see the big picture and how it's changed. This is an iteration in later years of what my own funnel started to look like. And you can see the point is it's a lot more organized. You can see that I've got different classifications of things that I was doing. I have arrows pointing to where they need to lead, to what types of calls to action I'll need to make. I had a sense of what was moving me forward. And what you don't see in this structure is that there's a lot of stuff that was on these pages that didn't ever make it to this, because I realized as I was trying to transfer them that they were leading me nowhere. Now, that's what happened when I did an exercise like this for the first time. Other people tend to have different revelations. Maybe you'll find that you're missing an important step that wouldn't get people from where they are now to where they need to be. And if you just inserted another step, you could get people there more effectively. There are a lot of different revelations that people will have about this. I've also found some clients who have a lot of content creation, a lot of stuff that they're doing to reach new people, but they don't have a lot of ways to offer them something at the end that really profit off of the content that they're creating. There's all kinds of things people discover in the process of doing this, but only by getting more organized can you see what challenges or what improvements can exist with your marketing plan. Let's also look at another angle of this as well. When we talk about how you're strategizing how to stay connected, I want you to think of it this way. Your marketing funnel, when you think about the way you're meeting people for the very first time, that's the entry level of your funnel. And that's probably where the most people are. More people are in that brand awareness phase for your business. And as you start putting calls to action out, you're going to notice that there is a drop off. Not everybody wants or needs your calls to action right now, but the people who are taking them are probably the more committed people, the people who are further along in the process of building a relationship with you. So as you continue to offer them other things, you're going to see a drop off, but you're also going to see that the most committed people are the ones who are remaining. And so when you think about what that means, how do you really leverage that? Where do you focus in your marketing funnel and put your time and attention as you build your marketing plan? Something to consider, and there is no one exact right answer, but it's something that you need to think through and experiment with for your business. My goal today, if you come away with absolutely nothing else from this conversation, I hope that you'll start to train your brain to always ask the question, what is the next step? Every single time you are reaching your audience in any way, whether it's one person or a volume of people, I want you to think, what is the next thing for this person or these people? What is the next way that I can help? What seed can I plant here that may start to prime them for another way that I can be of service to them? If you've been thinking about this, if you've been plotting this out for yourself, you're not going to waste time thinking about how to stay in touch because you've already got a framework for it. So you won't have to recreate the wheel in every single conversation. You'll just know what the next thing is that you need to mention to them. And because of that, your outreach will probably be more consistent and may even be more frequent. So those are some things, again, like I said, we start really general here today, but let's start getting more specific with it. Let's start talking about your actual strategy and how does it work. So I wanted to start with a simpler exercise to get us thinking about this. What is the next step conversation? Let's look at what does one pathway look like in your business. So if we think about it from this standpoint, this slide is one that you can print out later. You can use it as an exercise for your business. One pathway in your outreach plan. So let's say we're basing this on the rule of 7. What is the outcome that you want to have? And what is the very first time you can plant a seed for that outcome? And now if we're thinking about the rule of 7, how can we continue to reinforce that message enough times until the desired outcome is actually achieved? So this, of course, is a blank exercise for you to be able to use, but let's look at an example of this. We're going to do a lot of examples later to help you get thinking about what you want to fill in for your own business. So let's say for this particular business, we are aiming for the outcome of we want the consumer to buy a specific product. So let's think about one pathway that people could take to get there. Let's say we have some people on social media and we want them to ultimately buy a product from us. Okay, so whatever this business is, they're going to do a social media post about the product. And it could be a blog, it could be anything. And in that post, there's going to be a link to click to read the post. Okay, so now we've got a couple different touch points, a couple different planted seeds here. Now the consumer or the reader, the viewer, the audience is going to click through to the website. Great, they're on your website now. They're perhaps reading in more detail the resource that they clicked through to get to. Once they get there, yep, they've landed on your resource page, but also they've got a pop-up and it's inviting them to buy this product, or it's inviting them to sign up for a discount when they buy the product. So let's say that pop-up is for a discount. You'll see that done quite a lot on different company websites, especially like clothing companies, for example. So the pop-up is for a discount. Great. They're going to sign up. They like the idea of getting 10% off their purchase. So they sign up and now they're on your email list, which is great news because there's multiple ways you can reach out to them. Now, you could put them on a newsletter list where you're reaching them monthly, but let's continue this thread because this person is actively working through a pipeline of yours now. So they've signed up to get this 10% off coupon. Now they want to receive it. They're looking in their email to see if they've gotten it. They receive an email from this company with the 10% off coupon. They don't use it immediately. Okay, well, so you've got 1 week or 2 week or, a reminder right before expiration to send them another email to remind them about this coupon. And that last reminder is enough to get them to buy the product. Okay, so this would be a whole sequence of events that we're setting up, thinking about what is that next step. Now, the thing that's a little deceptive about breaking it down this way, there are actually a couple of things that are a little deceptive about it. It is helpful in that it's helping us think about what's the next step. But after somebody buys the product, we're going to have another pipeline that starts, because what's the next goal? Do you want them to buy the product again? Do you want them to buy something bigger? Do you want them to go to a live event? Do you want them, what is the next best thing for this person? So what looks like an ending here is sort of just the beginning of the next pipeline. And it's important to understand that. And, you know, as we consider this as well, you'll notice that there's probably places where things can branch off, or different pipelines can come together. When we only do things in this single pipeline way, we don't get to see that full visual to find places where there are efficiencies. But it is a helpful way to start thinking about how to build the next steps. Where are we trying to send people? So if you're brand new to doing something like this, this may be a useful way for you to start conceptualizing what is happening in the business. But let's start to get more and more detailed about this as we go, because I want to give you a lot of different examples to work with. So let's try an example that I'll call the networker. So whatever this business is doing some networking. And I want to provide a caveat here as well, because I'm going to share some different examples with you on the upcoming slides. Everybody here has a different type of business, but you can use good ideas that could apply to your business from any example model. You don't have to take the whole model. You could say, I like this idea and I want to incorporate it somehow. So if I'm talking about a product business and yours is a service business, but you like an idea, you can appropriate those ideas and you can incorporate them into your strategy. So please don't just disregard an entire model because you don't think it's like your business. Take the ideas that feel relevant, even if they're embedded within models that don't feel like they're meant for your business. That's often where the best ideas come from, because you can take things that work in maybe even other industries and adapt them to work in your own. And you suddenly become, the new kid on the block who's doing fancy things in your industry that nobody in your industry is doing, because you're solving a problem that another industry has already solved. So I just wanted to say that up front. But let's say we're going to work through an example here, a simple example called the networker. And this business, whatever this business is, they're doing a few different things for networking. And ultimately, they want to get to somebody who's going to be buying their services or products multiple times. So what are the things that they're doing to reach people for the first time? Well, first of all, they're going to, let's say, networking events. Let's say they have a once a month networking at an event that they're attending, and they're getting a chance to meet people face to face there. Let's say they also occasionally have people who refer their business. So that's a different kind of situation where they may or may not know that the referral has been made until somebody reaches out. Also, this business has been a guest on some podcasts. They don't have a podcast themselves, but they have been a guest on somebody else's podcast. So because of that, there's content that's been recorded that is out there in the world. Now, what is the next step from each of these things? Because those are all three different things that this business does that could create brand awareness. But what happens after that? From a networking event, the people that this business meets, there's potentially a chance for either person to connect with the other one. So whoever makes the first outreach, the business has a plan that they're definitely going to either receive an email right away or send an email right away. They can only control sending the email right away. They don't know for sure what they're going to receive. So they'll have a plan for how they're going to follow up with people that they've met through networking. Now, from the referral standpoint, they may or may not know the referral has been made. So if an introduction is made, great, they can follow up by email. If not, they are waiting for somebody to contact them to let them know the referral was made. From the podcast standpoint, they put this content out there. They have absolutely no idea who's listening to the podcast until somebody reaches out. So in in the conversation for the podcast recording, they have to plant a seed about a next step. Maybe the seed they plant is email me at, and they give their email address, or they give a landing page on their website that has their email address, and they're hoping that people will email them. Maybe they'll even prompt those people with an incentive or with a question that they want to get going for the conversation, so that people are more inclined to do that first email. Okay, great. So now there's email traffic happening. And a lot of times with emails, you might send an email or two, you might have some back and forth, and then it reaches a natural pause. There's a moment where initially it feels like what needs to be said has been said, and now you're just in sort of like a waiting game. So let's call that first round of direct email. Now, this business has decided, I want a way to continue to maintain those relationships after that natural pause is hit. So I'm going to find a reason to get back in touch every couple of months with all of those people that I've had those emails with. And hopefully by staying in front of them, they'll think to buy my services one time. And there's probably a whole other pipeline here of continued outreach. Hopefully those people can now become repeat customers because they've seen the value of my product or service. So this may seem like a great idea, right? This is a funnel to start with, but what if the networker realizes that as much as this feels like a good plan, I can't seem to get people to buy my services one time. Something is missing here. The relationship is not strong enough yet. So what can I do? What can I add? This is where we become a sleuth in our business. We become a detective, and we figure out, okay, what can I tweak to make this whole thing work better? So the networker might say, well, what if I try this? What if I just add a few steps here? So from those initial direct emails, what if my goal isn't just to get them to buy services one time right away? What if my first goal is to get them to meet me for coffee or to meet me on a Zoom call? Now I can build a stronger relationship, and I can add them in two more ways. I can say, how about I send you my portfolio, or I send you some additional information? And they say, sure. And then you say, what about if I add you to my weekly newsletter list? I have lots of great new information coming out week to week that you might find helpful. And they say, great. So now you have these additional touch points to build the strength of the relationship and to stay in front of them. And now as you head back into the main funnel, you might find that the relationship is now strong enough where they're willing to buy the services one time. Again, there is no exact right way to do this. This is where we have to say something is missing here. And that's where we start to experiment. If you have a pipeline in your marketing funnel that feels like it's working well, great. Focus on the other ones, see where the improvement can be made, or focus on building more volume into the funnels that are the pipelines that are already working for you. So this is really just a framework for you to start mapping this out and say, what is working here and what is not? Now let's look at a different example. Let's think about a company that is focused on getting big contracts. Okay, so we're going to look at that top level. Again, that's the entry level. That is brand awareness, how people are hearing about this business for the first time. Now we've got a few different options for this. First of all, this business could be building lists of businesses or companies or contacts they want to reach out to. So those contacts have not heard from them yet. There isn't really brand awareness for them yet. But the business is becoming aware of who they want to contact directly to start building the relationship. So let's put list building as a category there. Also, there may be resources that this business is looking at where RFPs are listed, requests for proposal are listed, and they're going to stay on top of those sites, those sources, and they're going to look for RFPs that feel relevant so that they can put in applications. Also, there may be supplier lists that are relevant. It could be, minority supplier lists. It could be women's business supplier lists. It could be supplier lists based on industry. And they feel like if I can get my name in there, if I can get my business in there, I might get noticed by companies that are looking for suppliers just like me. So those are three different places where the brand awareness can happen. Now, what if we then said, okay, we're moving towards that direct email process. So for the list building, we're going to do outreach to those contacts that we've decided could be a good fit and start building the relationship. For the RFP, you are eventually going to have to put a proposal in, but maybe you start with some email traffic to make sure that you're, getting the information correct, what they actually need to know. For the supplier list, the supplier's probably, the vendor's probably going to reach out to you, or I should say the client is probably going to reach out to the supplier to say, this is what I'm looking for. Can you do it? So now you're in this direct email process. And the idea is you want to get to a point where there's a face-to-face pitch. With the RFP, there's probably going to be a proposal sent at some point here. But okay, what if this is like a really big contract? Going from emails to a face-to-face pitch might not be as realistic as you hope it would be. So what if we then say, let's build in a whole gatekeeper plan? What if there are people who can help get me in front of the decision maker? And I can build a relationship with them as well. If this is something that you've found has been useful in your industry, you're really going to want to have like a gatekeeper focused portion of your funnel. So in this situation, we've got this whole list of people that we're reaching out to. Well, what if this business says, I'm going to figure out who the assistant is. I'm going to figure out who's the person who's, holding the keys to the decision maker. I'm going to maybe give them a gift. I'm going to ask them for their input. I'm going to ask them for an introduction to the decision maker. Maybe those are some things that you can do where you now are more likely to get the face-to-face pitch that can then lead to the contract. But once you get the contract, again, where do we go next from here? It's the beginning of a new pipeline. You've got that contract. How can you stay in touch throughout the process? How can you secure the next contract or a bigger contract? How can you get a referral to another company, another team within their company who needs something like this? So, what is the next step from here? All right, let's look at another example. Like you'll start to see that I'm getting more and more complicated as we go through. This is the wholesaler plus retailer type of business. So let's say, for example, your business, you sell blueberries. You very well could have a direct to consumer pipeline where you're selling directly to the people who want to eat the blueberries. But maybe you also have a wholesale market. Like, for example, maybe you're selling to bakeries who want to use the blueberries in their baked goods. So there's, this two different types of pipelines that can be happening concurrently for this business. And so let's break those down. On the left side, I've got the direct to consumer pathway. People might hear about this blueberry business from referrals, other people who are saying, oh, these are the best blueberries ever. Maybe this blueberry company has a social media presence and they're posting on social media, and maybe they're showing up weekly at farmers markets. Okay, so those are ways people can discover this business. From there, we want to get people to the website, let me learn more about this company and, where I can find them and more about their company philosophy. Great. From the website, can we get them down a couple different roads? Can we have a lead magnet, something that they can sign up for, a discount on their first purchase, a blueberry quiz, a, book of recipes for blueberries. All they have to do is put their email address in and they get it. So now you got their email address, and they're on the newsletter list, and we're going to reach them, once a week or once a month or once a quarter until they buy the blueberries. You get a product sale. And then once they've bought the blueberries, you're going to have an email sequence that goes out offering them a discount for the next purchase or a bulk purchase, a bigger purchase than what they had before, because you're hoping that they're going to become a repeat customer. Now, on the other side of this pathway, what if you have like a blueberry membership group, the Blueberries of the Month Club, I don't know, something like that. And so you get some people to sign up for that, and you have special campaigns or events for the people who are part of that because you want to get them to buy more product. So you can start to see all the different ways that it can diverge, but that it comes back together, and that you're trying to ultimately, at the end of the day, get these people into that product sale pathway. Now, on the other side of this, what about those bakeries you're trying to reach? Well, so this business, a couple different ways they can reach out to those types of companies is, first of all, they could go to trade shows. Maybe there are places where there are other suppliers who are looking for suppliers who can help them with the blueberries, and so they can make connections there. Or maybe they just start building a list They think I can do this myself. I'll go on the internet and figure out all the bakeries in the area and start reaching out to them directly. So either of these things can land into that let's email directly phase. Now, let me get you some more proof, some more information, some more questions answered. I'll get you a line sheet or a sell sheet or whatever the sheet is called for your industry that gives people more information about pricing and all those other details they need. And maybe from there, you're trying to get to a phone call or give them a sample or a tour or both, with the hope that they eventually purchase the product. But then what, right? They've purchased the product one time and you don't want that to be the end of the road. So what's the next pipeline that starts? Can you get them thinking about what the next purchase will be, or getting them to become a regular customer of yours, a regular wholesale customer? So, you can see that these pipelines look a little different, but what I love about mapping it out this way is that you can start to see also the way that each pipeline influences the other one. So for example, the consumers, the direct to consumer pipeline on the left, they might be interested to know what wholesale companies love your product so much that they're buying it from you. Like, these are the blueberries used by the following bakeries. This becomes a feather in your cap to share with the direct to consumer list. And the reverse is true as well. The wholesalers would love to know that you have a waiting audience. Of course, you want to put these blueberries in your blueberry buckle, because look at all these people that I've got on my list who love my blueberries. This means they'll probably love your buckle. Like, this is just a feather in your cap that you can share on both sides. So while they exist independently, they still influence each other in some way. And that's now something that you've mapped out, that you can really know where the strengths are. So I know that we're, as I start to get into examples, we need to sort of hit the reset button a little bit here, because I know that it can be a lot of information, a lot of me talking. Let's sum it up for the moment and say that your funnel is actually a visual documentation of every pathway. So what I'd like to see is a point where we're not just thinking about one pipeline, but we're thinking about how it all comes together. So I'm going to show you one more example, a simple but more complex example at the same time, that shows what's happening in your business can be more than just one pipeline at a time. So let's look at this. And this may seem like a lot to look at first, but I want you to notice that the whole thing on the left is just the networker. Okay, so we've seen half of this already, and we're just going to build it out a little bit. Whatever this business is, and I'm throwing a lot of ideas into this example, so it's arguable what this business is. If you've got an idea of what this business is, you let me know. This business, from that brand awareness level up top here, is doing a bunch of different things to reach people for the first time. We know from the networker example, they're doing some networking, they're getting the occasional referral, and they're recording some podcasts that they've been a guest on. So that's out there in the world. This business also is going to occasionally do an ad in a newspaper, a local newspaper. They're listed in a few directories. They're doing some social media posts as well. And people can potentially find this business by doing a Google search. Okay, so those are all a list of ways that people can hear about this business for the first time. Now, what happens from these steps? Well, on the left, we've seen the networker example. You're going to try to get from networking or referrals or podcasts to that direct email sequence. You want to meet for coffee. You want to send the portfolio. You're going to keep touching base every couple of months, and you're hoping people will buy your services once and then repeat. We've seen that example. What happens from the ads in the newspaper? Well, we don't want people to just see the ad and walk away. We want them to take an action. So maybe there's an incentive. Maybe we want them to sign up for something, or we give them a specific number to call to take advantage of an opportunity. Now those people, they've signed up for something, they end up on the newsletter list, they buy the services one time, and hopefully then we can get them into a pipeline to become multiple time customers. From the directory listing, social media, or Google search, we want to get people to the website. Great. Once they're there, they need more information. So maybe we've got blogs. blogs that provide more information about this business and provide more of that expertise. Maybe from there, we can get people to buy something low cost based on those blogs. And then maybe we can get them to buy a product bundle a few months later, after they've run out of the service or product, or we can escalate them to the next thing. And then maybe they're looking for sort of like a monthly service or a monthly product from us. This is just a model that you could look at. There's lots of different ways to do this. One of the things I want you to notice here is that we've got arrows that go sideways. You could have arrows that go back to previous levels, and that's not a defeat. That is just giving people another way to find the right level of where your funnel is. So for example, from the ad in the newspaper, maybe once they've hit that sign up page or the incentive, they're going to explore the rest of your website or send you an email directly. There's always going to be ways, sometimes people circle in an area for a while before they're ready to move on. So the question becomes, how can I keep them at the right level until they're ready to take that next step? So, when you look at this, it may initially look complex, but the hope is that we're really able to start giving people avenues to stay in contact with us as much as possible. Your business may look different from any of these examples, but the point is that we're continuing to ask this question: what is the next step that's logical in my business for the people who are at this level? And if you know that, you can start building that framework. So let's talk about what building that framework will look like for you, because my hope is that you come away from this presentation, you marinate on it a little bit, and then you start working out what your funnel actually looks like. So the first thing that I would do if I were creating a funnel for my business or a client business is I would ask the question, what is in your tiers? Before you can put a puzzle together, you have to have the pieces. So before you think about how to lay them all out, just think about what are the ways you can communicate with people. I would start by thinking about that entry level. What are the ways you can get that first time brand awareness? I'm going to give you some examples of this on the next slide. We're just laying out these ideas first. After the entry level, what are some free offerings? Information, resources, giveaways, whatever that needs to look like. What are some free offerings that you can get people to be more invested in your business without having to put in a lot of skin in the game themselves? Until they're ready to do that, you want to keep them with you. So some of our businesses are going to spend, depending on what you're selling, you may spend multiple, like a lot of time with multiple levels of those free offerings. Or maybe you find that you don't need to do as much of that. Maybe you have a model of low priced, mid-priced, and high-priced offerings that really lends itself well to people taking next steps relatively quickly. So you have to think about it logically for your own business. So low price, mid-priced, and high-priced. Some of you may think, but I don't really have low priced, or I don't really have high priced. Okay, well, start working out what you do have and start just identifying, listing out what things that you can do. Now, when you think about that, entry level, you can think about just making that list and what's going to go in it. Is there word of mouth happening? Referrals? Are there certain sources for those referrals? Are you on social media? Where are you and how are you communicating there? Can you put flyers up around town? Do you have a storefront with signage that people can see? Are you going to networking events? Are there trade shows or farmers markets that you're part of? You can see from the examples I've shared before that sometimes you can do list building and decide people you want to reach out to first. There's so many different ways that you can get information out there about your business. Sometimes there are lead generation tools where people are sending out, requests for proposal, and you can just pay a little money and fill out a proposal for them. So look at what your options are, and then ask yourself, what can I do to stay in front of those people? Can I give free samples? Can I give free downloadable information so I can get them on my email list? Can I send them newsletters? Can I write blogs and have content? Can I create branded items for giveaways that they can use? If you have a really big ticket item, maybe you need to wine and dine people, which is not free to you, but it's free to them. So, really think about what you can do to stay in touch with people. Then we start hitting those 4 fee levels. Low priced offerings. Do you have a trial offer of something that's bigger? Do you have something downloadable that could be low cost, or information, tutorials that are low cost? Do you actually have a smaller product or service that's, fits that range in your price points? Mid-priced could be that you have something that fits that middle level of your price points, but it could also be that you bundle a bunch of smaller things together. High-priced, everybody's business looks a little different, but maybe you want to turn something into a monthly or annual service. Maybe you do actually have a big ticket item. Maybe you've got an online course that you want to get people into. Maybe you have a live event, a big conference you want to get people to sign up for. So think about what it is you're selling, and that becomes sort of the pinnacle. And you can look at all those examples. And again, once you hit those high priced, once you hit sort of the end of the road, how can you get people to circle back around to the front? How can you get them to make more referrals for you? How can you get them to build community with each other so that you continue to get new people onto your list? So these are just some different things to break down. But the step 1 is simply start listing out the puzzle pieces that you need to put into your puzzle. Once you've got that, you can start creating your tier structure. You're going to want to create arrows between things. So look at all the stuff that's online, look at all the stuff that's offline, try to group them together so that you don't have too many things crossing over. I will give you this tip. You want to find a format that will work for you, that will allow you to make changes. I tend to use Excel because I can move things around and it's an infinite palette. I've seen people use Post-its on a wall. I've seen people create what looks to me like murder boards. They actually use up wall space and they start drawing strings between things and arrows between things. You can use like a mind map type of tool. As long as it's not the tool that you have access to, you're going to make changes to it on a regular basis. So make sure it's something that is editable, so that you know that you can make those changes fairly easily. Now, if this has been starting to kind of overwhelm you in the sense of how much do people really want to hear from me, I want you to consider this. It's part of the question here is asking yourself, where do you want your leads to go next? But we can also frame this a little differently and say, how can I help them next? What is the next thing my audience needs? Because that is going to improve their lives in some way. And I can predict that based on where they are now. So when you look at it from this standpoint, it's now coming from a place of service. It's now coming from a place of how can I make my audience's world a better place? And that may feel like a more comfortable avenue, because sometimes it's just as simple as planting a seed. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be forcing it down somebody's throat. You can just be saying, hey, you're here right now. I just want you to be aware that this thing exists in case you ever need it. And then you can find ways to add subtle reminders occasionally if you want to, or you can be more overt about it. You'll find that your comfort zone increases over time if you start doing things like this. But if it's feeling like something that's reluctant for you at the very beginning, just remember that if it's truly your target market and if your product or service is actually improving their lives in some way, wouldn't they maybe want to know that there's something that you can do that's going to help them later? So let's look at this just a little bit more. The last thing that we'll be looking at here, why is it worthwhile to do this? I want to pose a couple questions to you. So if you're on with me live, I know it's been a minute since I've given you an opportunity to answer questions, so we're going to do a couple in a row. If you're on with me live, answer this question in the chat. How does it feel when you don't know the way forward? And if you're not on with me live, feel free to just think about this as you consider before you move on. If you know that you're having a pain point or a problem, but you're not sure what the way forward is, or even if there is one, what does that feel like for you? So Ashley jumps in right away with lost. Brennan's saying frustrating. So we've got lost, we've got frustrating. How does it feel for you when you aren't really sure what the way forward is, or if there is one? Tackmanite's saying lost and stuck. Randall's also saying frustrating. So let's see, Katie's saying nervous. Oh my goodness, right? So how does it feel for you if you haven't had a chance to weigh in yet? I'll give you a moment. How does it feel when you don't know the way forward? Jamie's saying, I feel incompetent. So, I mean, think about some of these answers that we're getting. I mean, this is rough. Emily's saying frustrating. We've had a few people hone in on this word frustrating. We're uncomfortable. We've got, you know, a lot of different options here, but none of them feel good, do they? I mean, when we are, as consumers, when we are sitting in a pain point, when we are experiencing a problem that needs solving but don't have the solution, it feels to us like the things that you've just been saying. That doesn't feel great. Some of your audience is feeling like this right now. I'm going to ask you a second question. How does it feel when someone offers you solutions? So somebody, maybe a friend, maybe, you know, a business, they hear about the problem that you're experiencing and they say, have you tried this? Have you ever heard of this? Did you know that this is a thing? Maybe they're not selling it to you, like hard selling it. Maybe they're just saying, just be aware, this thing exists. So Brennan's saying inspiring. How does it feel to you when somebody offers a potential solution for a problem they know you're experiencing now? Ashley's saying instant relief and motivating. Yep. So how does it feel for you as you're thinking about this? So Tackmanite's saying it eases the nerves and frustration. Jamie, if it's unsolicited, it's irritating. Something like these workshops, it's a relief. Yeah, so how it's done matters, but it can be good, it can be irritating. So there's a bit of a range there. Think about some of these, think about how different these answers feel than the ones we just had. So when we were sitting in the pain point, we were feeling frustrated, we were feeling lost. When we know that there's something out there that could help, for a lot of us, it provides some amount of hope or relief or potential relief. I want you to think about the impact of this for your audience, right? So if they're really experiencing a pain point that you can help them with, find a way to start letting them know what the thing is that you can do to help them. Because it's not that they need to buy it right then and there. They may not even be ready to buy it right then and there. Just knowing it exists may give them something to research. It may give them something to consider or to talk to others about. It may be giving them hope, just knowing that your thing exists. And so isn't it a good idea to tell them, you know, we want to create room for their problems to be solved. And ultimately it is on them if they want to take you up on that, but they have to know it exists first. And they can't just guess the ways that you can solve their problems. It helps for you to plant those seeds. So I want you to think about that the next time you're thinking, should I reach out? Find a way to do it that feels like it's still in your comfort zone enough, but that stretches you to plant a seed and just start seeing what the results are. So what are some potential outcomes for doing all of this? First of all, like we were just saying, you could potentially put your clients at ease by offering some solutions. You also are coming from a place of service with your clients. You're staying in touch with them, which gives you a potential to build trust. And at the very least, it's not ignoring them. If any of you have had the experience of just suddenly being ignored or ghosted by a company that you were trying to talk with, or by a person you were trying to talk with, that can be frustrating if you actually were looking for the results of that conversation. So don't leave your clients hanging like that. On your side, you are creating more sales opportunities by nurturing your sales contacts more, whether you're creating potential sales opportunities from them or from people in their circle. There is something happening there if you're staying in front of them. But also, and this is really important, and this was an impact that it had for me, to do a strategy, to create a strategy like this, it helps you get organized on what you need to deliver. I'm telling you right now, as soon as I went from 5.5 pages of notes about what I did to any sort of a structure, I started finding things that I was doing that I was wasting my time doing. And I stopped doing them immediately. And so, you know, whether that's the exact result you have or not, there's probably something to be gleaned out of getting organized about what you're doing. Are there efficiencies? Are there things that you can delegate? You know, like, let's talk about that. You could identify the busy work. You can find gaps, you know, like we saw in that networker example. Maybe there are things that you're doing that would both function much better if you just inserted this step in the middle. And now that you've documented it, you can see that a lot more clearly. You can find things that can be delegated. You can find things that feel like next year plans, like, oh, I'm doing all of this right now, but I think what I really need to do is build up this part of my strategy before I move on to the next part. So, you know, these are some different things that you may find happen for your business. I've seen a couple other different types of results for certain clients that were maybe isolated events. So there's a lot of, you know, like, you could potentially find new offerings that you can create. There are certain things that could happen for you in this process, and I don't want to rule those out. But just as you get organized, you can see what the potential is for your business, and how getting organized changes the way you look at your business, also allows you to operate differently day to day and week to week. Now, I've been talking at you so much here, and I want to leave time for questions that you may have. So let's just say, you know, start creating your marketing strategy, and that will become a roadmap for you to more sales and more referrals. This is a great time. If you're on with me live, start getting some questions in. I'm very happy to answer questions specific to your business, but I'll do it in a way that people can look at it as another example for them to potentially, you know, take pieces of. So here's a reminder of what we talked about in case it helps jog any questions for you. First, we talked about the value of staying in touch. We talked a little bit about strategizing how to stay connected. Those two sections were a bit more abstract. Then we started to get more detailed. How your strategy works was a lot about the examples that we gave, the wholesale and retail, the networker, the big contracts. We talked about tips for creating your funnel when you get started with the process. And then we looked at why we want to do this, why it's good for your clients, and why it could potentially be good for you. As you get any questions in, a couple things I wanted you to be aware of. So on that landing page link that I provided earlier, and I will provide it again in the chat here now, there's a couple resources. So the single pathway exercise, I've pulled that out from the slides separately so you can access that. I also threw in a whole exercise from one of my online courses, an exercise called funnel composition and filling your tiers, and it's going to help you figure out the puzzle pieces. So it prompts you with questions about what components need to go into your specific funnel. So if you feel like you need to work through this step, through this exercise, that's going to be a really good resource for you to open up first, so that you can start just to game plan on what needs to go into the structure. So having said that, there's also a bunch of additional reading, some additional blogs that you can just get some more insight on some different angles for the marketing funnel and why it can be useful to you as you create it. So as we get to any questions here, first of all, I have that link up for the landing page again, but I'm also putting up a link to the ASBTDC site because they're happy to help you with consultation. So I'll turn it over to Julie as well to make sure that if any of you are looking for advising or for support in a process like this, hopefully Julie can mention the best way for you to go about getting time on the calendar.
So for those of you who are not clients of the center, and if you need help as a startup, if you need help growing your business, if you've hit a snag with some financial matter that you need some guidance on, or a lot of our marketing resources, you can reach out to us on our website and request a consultation. And that's sbtdc.com/ And in the upper right-hand corner of each page, you'll find Get a Consultation button. I recognize several people on the webinar, and so I know you are already clients. So hopefully you know exactly how to reach out to your individual counselor. And I just posted in the chat the link where Melissa's recording of today's presentation will be, and you'll find that under our marketing resources, along with a whole host of other presentations from Melissa and her whole series that she's done for us for the last, gosh, now 3 years.
Yeah.
Just a great information there, and that I know will be very helpful to you, that you can refer back to over and over again. So any questions for Melissa before we?
We do
Why-
have a couple that I
Okay.
wanted to address, and anybody else who has questions, feel free to get those into the chat. But we've got some really good ones to start us off. So I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong, but I'm going to say Tachmanite asks a question probably a lot of people have. This might sound strange, but what if you aren't sure you have anything to share or offer potential customers in terms of updates? I don't want to completely wear out my clients with posts that seem more of a nuance to them. And you could insert in place of the word posts pretty much any way that you're reaching out to people. This is probably one of the most common sentiments that I get from clients that I'm working with. I don't want to be overbearing. I don't want to say too much. And then when I actually see what those people are doing, they're saying almost nothing, or they're only reaching a small segment of their audience. And so there has to be a middle ground there. And you might be surprised. So I'll tell you this example from my own business. Years ago, when I first started doing blogs on my website, I was doing short weekly blogs, but I didn't feel comfortable emailing people regularly. So I sent a monthly digest to anybody who was on my list. I would send one email a month to the list of people that I had, and I would pile all of my blogs into them. And then there came a point when I thought, what if I went weekly? What if I separated out the weekly blogs that I was doing into weekly emails? And I was terrified about it because I thought, my list does not want to absorb quadruple the number of emails from me. No chance. But at some point I finally took the leap and I did it. And my results were better because I was able to split out the different, when I was sending monthly digests, it was a huge amount of content for people to absorb, and they probably weren't reading my emails as a result. So when I started separating out the content into weekly, I was able to put the title of the blog as my subject line of my email, and the audience could decide if they needed that topic. So without having to open up the email and fish through and see if there was anything they wanted, they could at a glance say, oh, I do want to know more about networking, or I don't need to know more about Twitter today. And so they would stay on my list longer because I was making it very easy for them to figure out what the content was going to be about. And I was able to see who was clicking on what. So if I had, if I did a bunch of networking emails and they got a higher open rate, I was starting to see what type of content my audience was interested in. And the more you can plant that there, the more you can tailor what you're sharing with them. So if you're getting really good results on a certain type of update, Tachmanite, you could do more of it. Or it might change how you're offering what you're offering even, or how often you're doing it. So that kind of information only helps you create that dialogue with your customers, but we have to start stretching ourselves a little bit and how much we feel comfortable to reach out to people in order to do it. And there's no way around it. It's going to feel like a stretch. Just start at the edge of your comfort zone, and you'll find that your comfort zone is actually going to expand pretty quickly. And what you felt comfortable doing today versus a year from now might be two very different things. So thank you so much for asking that question, because I bet you other people have it. Ashley jumps in with, what would be your suggestion for a starting point for an in-home bakery business that hopes to expand? I run into the issue of trying to manipulate the awesome marketing strategies and techniques to fit my business in its current state. Let me just absorb that once more. Reading it aloud doesn't necessarily allow me to absorb it. So let's see, in-home bakery business. So the reason I suggest, this is a great question. And the reason that I suggest putting your marketing funnel in a format that you can edit later is that your business will continue to change as you experiment with these things, and your business may continue to change as the world changes. I mean, when the pandemic started, everybody's marketing funnels had to be totally like revised and recreated. And that was an example of the world shifting and your target market shifting very quickly. But target markets are constantly shifting slowly. So, we need to be able to respond to that, and your business is going to be changing. So if you are looking for a starting point for an in-home bakery business, start looking for ways to really make sure that you have a way to stay in touch with people who are interested in you, and then start looking at what is available to you right now to build your circle. And as your list starts to grow, you're going to have a lot more options. So for example, for businesses that are pre-launch or ones that are early on, I usually invite people to make sure that their marketing funnel includes a lot of ways to inform people they already know about the business, or to build partnerships within circles that they're already in. But then as they do that, and as you have ways to stay in front of your list, how do you then start expanding out to bigger partnerships? The more your list grows, the more appealing your business is as a partnership to other businesses. So your options change. The more sales you're making, the more you can potentially spend on advertising if you want to. Whereas a lot of businesses, when they start, don't have any budget for advertising. So they're looking only for organic marketing solutions that take time versus money. But then the things shift. So start where you are. Start where you are right now. Let your marketing funnel show where you are right now. And then look at it again next year. Look at it again next year with fresh eyes and say, what do I have available to me now that I didn't have before? Or what's less available to me now that was available in abundance before? Just know that you're going to come back to it in a year so that you can make those updates. What you do today, what strategy you create today doesn't have to be forever. So those are some things that I would look at there. And with an in-home bakery business, there may be a lot of potential for collaborative partnerships with other businesses that, think about, is your business going to tie in really well to pampering related businesses out there, or self-care? Or if you were telling me that it's like a gluten-free or a keto business, then we might be looking at other types of partnerships. But really think about what collaborations exist for you right now. I love these questions. Thank you so much for those who have been contributing questions. I hope that this whole conversation gets people thinking. I hope that everybody came away with at least one thing that they can work on to improve their marketing funnel, regardless of where you are in the process of having a plan mapped out for your business.
Melissa, Jamie has a question in the chat. I'm wanting to reach an existing audience, but almost in a whole new way. Should I start them at the beginning of the funnel, like they are a new contact or a new client?
So that's a really good question. I have some questions about what that means for you. So I'm going to just put a couple options out there. Reach an existing audience, but in a whole new way. One thing that you can do, for example, if you decided I want to do email marketing, you could do a first email that says, hey, you've been hearing from me in these other places, but I'm looking to start sending out monthly blanks, like blankety blank, whatever that is for your business, whatever resources or valuable information you're sharing. So stay tuned for that. And you can always unsubscribe. So you can take the audience, remind them that they know you from another place, and bring them over to this new place. But if you feel like you want to reach them in a whole new way because they don't remember you're there anymore, then it's sort of like a reintroduction to them. I think most of the time, if it's an existing audience, you can say, you know me from here, and here's what you can expect from me now. And maybe give them that heads up before you start launching into whatever the new plan is, so that they feel like there was that moment from you of saying, hey, I know you're here. Here's why you're on this list. So that can be a way to do it. I'm hoping that addresses your question. I feel like you have something very specific in mind. So if it didn't, just let us know.
Okay, I want to thank everyone again for attending, and I want to especially thank Melissa for another great presentation. Just one quick note, we have offices in Fayetteville and in Bentonville if you're in Northwest Arkansas. So we can meet with you in person or by phone or Zoom. So visit the website if you need a consultation and get signed up. If you are from other areas in Arkansas, check the Small Business Development Center website to see which office in the state of Arkansas best serves you. So if we don't have any more questions, it looks like
Jamie just had a follow-up.
Yeah.
But I think I'd like to maintain my answer. I think that still works for the way you specified it. So, just let them know what you're doing and remind them that you're there and that they've worked with you before.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. And we look forward to our next time.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.